He's Peter King, the MMQB.com, SI.com, Football Night in America. All right, Peter, explain to me the P80 rule, not just where it's going to be, obviously the 20-yard line, but how much of a chance does this have of being implemented full-time next year?
It doesn't have any chance to be implemented full-time next year. I think it might be a few years before there's any major change in it, Chris. What they basically did is they said, we're going to experiment in some preseason games by moving it back to the 20-yard line. That's not going to fix very much, because that means it'll be like a 37-yard field goal, which field goals between 35 and 40 are now at 88, 90% anyway. So that's a Band-Aid. They have to make a decision in the NFL at some point to get rid of what has become an anachronistic part of the game that was invented in 1912 and just doesn't work anymore. Or just automatically give teams 7 points or do something very severe to make it a lot harder to make that extra point.
Are they hoping that with this new rule in the preseason that more teams go for two?
Yes. They want teams to go for two. I'm not sure everybody in football wants teams to go for two. I'm not sure the union, which hasn't checked in yet, wants more teams to go for two, because one of the reasons why the union over the years has fought the NFL, and rightfully so, is that every additional play is another play that guys can get hurt on. You don't see a lot of people other than Rob Gronkowski a few years ago getting hurt in field goal or extra point formation.
The new centralized replay system, Peter, who makes the final call on that? Is it the refs on the field, or is it the people in New York?
The refs on the field, the one ref on the field. There's one referee. There's 6 other officials on the crew. The league office will have a direct line of communication to the referee, but Dean Blandino, the NFL vice president of officiating, made it very clear yesterday that it's not going to be his call. He's going to tell the referee what he thinks. But in the case of a disagreement, the referee is going to have to make the decision himself.
I want to ask you one more thing, though, about the pushing back the PATs. I mean, what's the percentage of coaches, organizations that are in favor of either moving back the point after the PAT line or abolishing it altogether versus the ones that want to keep it where it is?
That's a really, really good question, Chris. That is the question of the day. And I think one of the problems that you have when you ask a question like that at the league meetings is there are some guys who are not in favor of it, some coaches, but their bosses might be on the competition committee, or their bosses might feel differently. So at the end of the day, the biggest thing is not what the coaches think. It's what the owners think. And the owners oftentimes are more rooted in conservatism than the coaches are, if you can believe that. So I think right now it's less than 50%, but I was told yesterday that there was a surprising bendable position by a lot of people in the league about we have to do something about the extra point because it's a waste of 45 seconds.
He's Peter King, the MMQB.com, SI.com, Football Night in America. Where are we with playoff expansion? Is it something that we can expect to see in 2015, or are we going to have to wait even longer?
I think it's very likely to be 2015. Roger Goodell left the door open for 2014, but I sincerely doubt that it'll happen next year or this coming year. It's more likely 2015, and what'll happen is that it'll be the top seed in each conference will get a bye. 2 would play 7 in the first or in the wild card game. 3 would play 6, and 4 would play 5. So instead of a 4 playoff game wild card weekend, it would be 6.
Is there any concern? I mean, I know that the positives are extra TV revenue that comes in as a result of this, but is there any concern about watering down the postseason?
There's a lot of concern from people like me. I don't think it's a good idea at all. But, to a lot of coaches, I think the coaches in general are in favor of this because it means that 2 more teams are going to make the playoffs. 2 more teams will have their coaches not in jeopardy at the end of a season. So I think coaches are in favor of it. I agree with you. I don't think it's a good idea to play football for 4 months and have nearly half the teams in your league make the playoffs. I don't care what happens in basketball and hockey. Football shouldn't even be concerned with with what happens in basketball and hockey. It's not. They should model themselves. I don't think any league should model themselves after any other league, but I've heard that argument. Well, so many teams make it in basketball and hockey. Does that make it right? I still think it's wrong to have all those teams making the playoffs. It diminishes the importance of the regular season.
Is there any chance that the postseason expansion doesn't pass?
There's a chance, but I just think there's overwhelming support for it right now, Chris.
He's Peter King, the MMQB.com, SI.com, Football Night in America here, joining us here on the Dan Patrick Show. Is Johnny Manziel's pro day important to you?
Yeah, I think it's one of the only important pro days that anybody can have this off season, and I'll tell you why. It's interesting. I'm in the process of doing a story on Johnny Manziel, watching tape with a bunch of NFL people. The refrain comes back over and over and over again. I want to see this guy from the pocket. This guy's going to have to play from the pocket in the NFL. Not all the time, but the majority of the time. And very often, what you see is because Johnny Manziel is so fantastic at improvisational football, you don't see him just stay there in the pocket. And I think now teams at 11 o'clock this morning Central Time are going to gather in College Station, Texas, watch him with a 50 to 60 pass workout orchestrated by his passing guru, George Whitfield. And everybody is going to be asking the same thing. Let's see how this guy does when he takes a snap, goes back 5 or 7 steps, and has to rifle a ball from the pocket. We want to see what happens there. But, again, Chris, I've always said this about these workouts. They're throwing without a pass rush against them and without anybody covering the receiver. So there's only so much you can see. We're not going to know the truth about Johnny Manziel and how he can be as a pocket passer until the middle of September if somebody takes him and starts him.
Yeah, so executives and scouts out there really think that they can glean something from watching Johnny Manziel drop back 5 steps and throw with no rush and to wide receivers with no corners defending them?
They can glean something, but they have to, at the end of the day, divine whether he has made enough improvement in the last 2.5 months working on the pocket part of his game, because nobody's going to know for sure on draft day. Taking Johnny Manziel is going to be a leap of faith in many, many ways, one of which is, can he look more like an NFL quarterback than he needs to? And I can hear everybody saying right now, well, we don't want him to look like Dan Fouts or Dan Marino. We want him to run around. That's what happens. A guy who's 6 feet tall and who weighs 208, 212 pounds is not going to last in the NFL if he's always running around. You just can't. So you have to make sure that the guy is going to be able to play from the pocket.
Who's the Jets starting quarterback on opening day?
Michael Vick.
No Geno.
I think Vick's going to outplay him in the off season, outplay him in training camp. Everybody is, and look, I know Vick has his faults. He absolutely does as a football player. Turns it over too much, fumbles too much. We all know that. But I just think if it's an open competition, and I believe it will be an open competition, yeah, Geno gets the first snap, but that's not going to guarantee him anything. Michael Vick is going to be more accurate, I believe, in training camp, and I think he's going to show the coaches he should be the quarterback.
Good to talk to you, Peter. Safe travels.
All the best, Chris. Thank you.
That's Peter King, the MMQB.com.